evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've had a very pleasant dinner. My name is Roshan Daryani, and on behalf of the FICCI, a very, very warm welcome to everyone tonight here. So, despite the changes in the schedule, despite the limited notice, and of course the usual Manila traffic, the FICCI would like to thank you for making adjustment to your schedules and for being here tonight. So, of course, a special mention to our friends from My Great World, for without them, we might not have had this next batch this soon as well for the next GMM. So, thank you again to My Great World. For those who might have any questions about what My Great World is or what they have to offer to us, please feel free to reach our secretariats outside. Our usherates would be really glad to assist us with the flyers and different offers that they have. So tonight, we have a very exciting topic. Believe it or not, most businessmen are starting to ask these questions. Due to the many changes we have in the way we deal with business in this day and age, the way social enterprises work, it is timely that we have a really great speaker here today with us. And of course, discussing inclusive growth, how digital media can help us build our businesses. Of course, before we start anything else, without any further delays, let us please all rise as we start with an invocation to be led by our treasurer, Mr. Naresh Merpuri.
Let us all bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we are gathered here today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin with this general membership meeting. Thank you that our chamber is blessed with people whose contributions to our nation have inspired and helped others for the betterment of our community. Lord, we thank you for our guest speaker, Mr. John Rubio. We pray that you will give him great inspiration as he shares his knowledge and expertise which will enable our businesses to grow and help create a safe, informed, and inclusive community online. Help us to engage in meaningful discussions, allow us to grow closer as a chamber, and nurture the bonds of community. Help us to work together and encourage each other with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that will affect our businesses, colleagues, and the nation. And continue to remind us all that we are here today. All that we accomplish is in pursuit of wisdom for the greater glory of you and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Let us all remain standing for the Philippine and Indian national anthems.
Sir.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You may please have your seats. To officially start the program, please let us all give a round of applause as we call on to our very own President, Mr. Rex Darianani, to give us the welcome remarks and to officially start the program.
Mr. John Rubio, our beloved past presidents, dear members of the FICCI, my colleagues on the board, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is with great honor that I welcome each and every one of you to today's general membership meeting with our good friend, John Rubio, the country director of Facebook. John, thank you very much for accepting my invitation to be our guest of honor and speaker. We truly appreciate your taking time out from your busy and hectic schedule to be with us tonight. Our guest of honor will be properly introduced later on in the program. Every additional day that we squander not taking advantage of the greatest shift of our generation is an additional day that we have not woken up and accepted the reality of our times. How dare we settle for less when the world has made it so easy for us to be remarkable. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a time that we never thought would ever come. We are able to achieve things that we never imagined possible. Yet, many of us who know this continue to take our time and not harness the power of social media that is staring us in our face. Admittedly, many of us were born during a time when we would use the landline, oftentimes even with party lines, to communicate with one another remotely. Gone are the good old days of the landline. Instead, here are the days where we can communicate with thousands of people with one click. And it is the ability to do this that actually frightens us to move forward and seize the opportunity that has been made available to us. Today, our guest of honor hopes to help us get rid of this fear and teach us how to harness this new power called social media. Allow me to share some interesting quotes on social media that has even helped me open my mind to this amazing phenomenon. Social media can provide a conversational extension to a business-to-business company's nurturing programs. Social media gives us the opportunity to humanize our communications and make our companies more approachable. Social media is not media. The key is to listen, engage, and build relationships. Engage rather than sell. Work as a co-creator, not a marketer. If you make customers unhappy in the physical world, they might each tell 6 friends. If you make customers unhappy on the internet, they can each tell 6,000 friends. Build it, and they will come. Only works in the movies. Social media is a build it, nurture it, engage them, and they may come and stay. Social media is about the people, not about your business. Provide for the people, and the people will provide for you. Today, let us listen to our guest of honor as he shares his expertise with us on how to use digital marketing to build our businesses. I am confident that after tonight's event, we will go home more confident that this is indeed something that we all need to work on to help take us into the next chapter of our business and personal lives. I hope you enjoy every moment that our dear guest is with us. Once again, my deep gratitude to our guest of honor, John Rubio, for spending this evening with us. Thank you. Dhanyavad. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay and
Good evening, my fellow members and guests. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing our guest of honor. He is the country director of the most well-known social media platform on the planet, with 2.2 billion monthly active users. In addition to that, the company also owns Instagram, WhatsApp, and Oculus VR, just to name a few. Mr. John Rubio of Facebook Philippines. John graduated from Penn State University in '99 with a dual degree MBA and a Master's in Manufacturing Management degree. He has been based in New York, London, Chicago, and Singapore. Working for companies like IBM, KPMG, and McKinsey & Co. as a management consultant and strategy practitioner. But home was calling, and John came back, founding Mint, a mobile startup partnership between Globe Telecom, Ayala Corp, and Ant Financial. Mint provides mobile payments via GCash, online and offline merchant acquiring, and alternative lending through its subsidiary, Fuse. The Chinese e-commerce titan Alibaba, through its subsidiary Alipay, acquired 45% of Mint in 2017, valuing the company at $100 million. Then came an offer from Menlo Park, followed by a selfie at the like sign, and the rest is history. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Rubio.
Thanks, Rex. Thanks, Banesh. Not used to the podium, so I hope it's okay I pull it up. All right.
Wireless now. Yeah, there's a wireless right.
Oh, there is. Ah, there you go. Thank you. Hello. Hello. All right. Thanks for having me. Super excited. Awesome intro. I hope I can meet up half of the expectation that you've just now set out. So, as mentioned, my name is John. So I've been the country director for about the past year. What I'd like to share today is, as mentioned, it's a powerful platform for connecting people to each other, but also to businesses. And what I'd like to focus on today is how businesses can leverage that platform, right? So that you can connect to your customers and create more engaged relationships beyond, I'll call it, a transaction. So before I go into the actual 3-point speech around digital marketing, I wanted to talk first and give a bit of color around what Rex was challenging us about, around what is happening around the change and the disruption, primarily driven by the mobile phone. So as mentioned, so that's me, that picture, so this is my actual Facebook profile. When you look at that picture, I did take it. I was in Menlo Park at our office. This was last October, actually in 2017. Being a Filipino, selfie nation, right? We take the most selfies. So I had to take a selfie by our like sign. It's right in front of our headquarters. It's a famous sign. You always see people taking pictures there. It's basically the like thumbs up. The actual interesting part of this, which most everyone who goes to here to take a selfie misses, is what's actually in the back of that sign. So let me share what's this me in front. Let me show you. That's the back of the sign. So if anyone here is familiar with Sun Microsystems, so they were a fairly great company. They had great products, right? So they, anyone who ran infrastructure before knows about their Solaris platform. Really, really good. But what happened was they were an $8 billion company, and slowly as time evolved, right, their business model changed because it got disrupted by more distributed computing and so on, and basically they got acquired. The reason I say this is because the question is, people ask me, why is there the like sign in front of the Sun Microsystems sign. What actually happened was Mark, when he was looking for a bigger campus, he purchased Sun Microsystems' old headquarters and he tore everything down and he made it look like a college campus. He kept one thing though, which was this sign. So people asked him, why would you do that? So what he said was, he likes to keep this sign as a reminder to every employee at Facebook of what happens when you stop innovating. When you don't prepare yourself for disruption. He goes, guess what? You end up the back of someone else's sign. So just to, a famous stat that gets quoted a lot is just since the year 2000, about 50% of the Fortune 500 has been wiped out. They either went bankrupt, they either became vulnerable, they got acquired, and so forth. So think things like Blockbuster, or even recently Toys R Us, right? Famous brands and all these companies like Sun Microsystems slowly disappearing because they weren't able to manage the disruption. And a lot of what's happening today is a traditional industry model is getting disrupted. So that means, how do you connect with your customer? It's no longer about email or phone. Right now it's about how do you chat? Because that's how people communicate today. When you want to communicate to them, is it still about TV? Is it still a flyer or radio? Or is it connecting to them where they spend most of their time? So it's about being prepared for the challenge of digital models. So to contextualize it a bit and how fast things change, I want to share the top 5. These are the top 5 most valuable companies from a market cap perspective over that time frame, right? So if you look at 2001, it's your traditional, right? So you have a bank, you have one tech company, you have petroleum, and you have GE, this big conglomerate, right? 5 years later, 2006, nothing much happened, right? Some people just shifted. Interesting, now it's not all US companies. Now there's a foreign company, so Total came in there in 2006. Fast forward to 2011, not much has changed. You still see Exxon, petroleum, you see banks. You're starting to see more foreign companies, but here you're starting to see a shift. Because in 2011, about 3 years before Apple launched their iPhone. So now you see Apple is the second over there. What's interesting is just 5 years later, this is how that chart looks like. Wiped out. No more petroleum companies, no more banks and all this. It's all technology companies because it's all about the disruption that is happening, primarily driven by mobile. So you have Apple, first $1 trillion company a few weeks ago. And then as you progressively go through it, you have Alphabet, which owns Google, you have Amazon, you have Microsoft, made them come back. Facebook, unfortunately, if you've been following the stock market, I don't think we're number 5 anymore. So we had a bit of a rough patch about 2 weeks ago. Interestingly, number 5 and 6 are 2 Chinese companies, Tencent and Alibaba. So technology is disrupting everything, and as you can see, it's changing the landscape. The problem is only 13% of executives, when polled, feels that they're ready for digitally disruptive competition. And I'm happy for the invite because that tells me that this room is or wants to be part of that 13% that's prepared. So I want to talk through the transition that's happening in mobile before I actually just get into digital marketing. Because in order to understand why digital marketing is powerful and how to leverage it, you need to understand what's the ground shift that's happened in the mobile environment. So the first thing is mobile first. So the next picture is, it's an animation of how my desk theoretically looked like. So this was when I started working a long time ago. So in 2000, my first job was in KPMG. I was in New York. This was exactly how my desk looked like, right? And I'm going to fast forward that over a few years and all the changes that's happened since then. So as you see, you have the globe. If you knew before, there was this thing called the Rolodex where you kept calling cards. Calendars disappeared, your clock disappeared, your album disappeared, all Rolodex became LinkedIn, your newspapers now through Google, your encyclopedias, a wiki, Pinterest, camera, it's all gone, right? What happened was everything that you did or needed to do with something physical, I needed to look at a globe, I needed to research an encyclopedia, I needed to do this and that, is now available on your Mac, right? Or on your PC. What's even more amazing is they took all of that and then they put it on your mobile phone, right? For good or bad, so now you can work at the beach if you want or not, but everything is now in your mobile phone. So that's the transformation that's happened because people now interact with the world through the mobile phone. And again, I like visualization. So if anyone knows where this is at, just to give contextual clues, this is 2005. What big world event happened in 2005? So this is in Europe. Vatican? Okay, so in 2005, a new pope was elected, right? So this was when Pope Benedict was being inaugurated. People were waiting to see outside the Vatican if there was black or white smoke. White smoke basically indicates that yes, there's a new pope. So this was how it looked like, 2005. This is just 13 years ago. 8 years later, I'll fast forward. In 2013, there was another thing that happened in the exact same spot. There was a new pope, right? So now Pope Francis, because Pope Benedict retired, I want to show this exact spot. This is the picture in 2013 of that exact spot in 2005. It looks like that. That was the exact same spot. So that's how people interact with the world. If you've been to a concert recently, right? That's how the world looks like. Because people interact through the world, even sometimes with each other. So when I'm in the dining table, right, my daughter is messaging me over Messenger, right? So we interact through the world through this mobile phone, right? And because of that, Filipinos deeply engaged in technology. Oops, I pressed it too fast. I wanted to share, because I'm always proud about the Philippines, right? We were SMS capital. We sent the most number of SMSs. We became selfie capital because we took the most number of selfies. Interestingly, now also out of 200 plus companies in the world, we are number 2 in time spent daily in the world. Okay? I often get asked who's number 1. So the number 1 actually is also within the region. It's Thailand. The amazing part is not just that we spend the second most time on the internet. Is 4 hours of that is spent on mobile, right? And we were talking about it because at the table. The interesting part is people do this because the telcos give it away for free. So when you buy prepaid loan, which is about 90% of all loans sold in the Philippines, it's done through, you get free data, which is giving you Facebook and Messenger. Which is why 9 out of 10 people access social media. In the Philippines, primarily internet is through Facebook, which this is the humble brag portion of the speech where we have more than 70 million active users every month on the platform. Not many people know this, but Messenger is the number 1 messaging platform, more than 50 million, and more than 10 million people use Instagram. For a business, and as we transition to that part of the show, is what does it mean for a business? It means in the Philippines, because if you take the second most amount of time spent by 70 million people, right? 4 hours per day on mobile. Think about it, 95% of how people discover it now, and it's also starker the younger you get, so millennials and so forth. When they discover your product, when you introduce something new, whether they be toys or sportswear, 95% of them will probably find out about it first in Facebook or over social media. What's more interesting is that it's a rich environment where 3 out of 5, once you've discovered, eventually turn into customers and buy, right? So then I'll just end that section with sort of a banner message, which is what is your mobile strategy? So in a world where digital, and primarily digital over mobile, is the customer touch point, what is your strategy? How are you leveraging it, right? To Rex's point earlier, how are you building your business around it? So just one more point before I get into the how to actually leverage and market is about crucial connectivity. So just to share, here's what happens on 1 minute. So since I showed the slide before this, right, it's been about a minute. So in that time, there's been about 42 million messages sent over Messenger and WhatsApp. More than 150 million emails. You know, there's been about 70,000 posts on Instagram in that time frame. Right? 1 million people log into Facebook. There's this thing there that's 1 million Tinder swipes. I have no idea what this is. I keep on asking my staff to tell me, I don't know, will you be able to know what a swipe left or right is? I don't know. So 1 million of that, whatever that is, has just happened. So a lot of stuff happens on the internet, right? just to, again, show what that means. When you go through your feed, right, as you scan through your feed on Messenger or on Facebook, that physical space, on average, is 300 feet. And remember, Filipinos do about 2x the global average. So Filipinos do about 600 feet of feed. What is that visually? So basically, visually, that is the height of the Statue of Liberty. So basically, Filipinos go through 2 Statues of Liberty's worth of phone content in a day. What that tells me is that a lot of stuff happens on the internet. So as you look through, when you turn it into a business, you're competing for many different things. You're competing for attention for video, interesting cat videos. You're competing against attention for news that's happening globally and so forth. And if people are scrolling through 600 feet of feed, you need to stand out. And that's what I'll talk through today, is how do you build your business in a world where people go through all of that and you compete against so much. So 3 things. First is to couch it. The first is, there is a shift, and partly it's Facebook's fault because we talked so much about likes. Our whole, our sign is the like sign, right? The first thing to learn is that it's not about likes. You as a business shouldn't be thinking, how do I get more likes? How do I get more followers? How do I get more fans? And it goes back to some quant. I actually have charts, but I won't share that. But we basically did analysis to see if there was a larger propensity to buy your product if you liked it or not. And the correlation was almost 0. The reason is because the Philippines and Filipinos are a nation of lurkers. We may not click like or follow, but basically we still consume the content. So what happens is that if you only focus on people who liked your page, you're missing out on, let's say you have 1 million followers, you're missing out on the 69 million other Facebook users who may not click like on your phone, but will buy your product because they'll be swayed by your advertisement. So that's the first. It's not about how can you get more fans. Overall, all 3 things right here talk about moving to a business objective. Instead of saying how much more likes or comments can you get, it should be how can I get a lead for my product. For example, if you're doing a loan, and you probably have seen ads of banks doing this, if you're pushing let's say a personal loan, why wouldn't you, instead of saying please like my page, why wouldn't you give them, right, an offer and then say please sign up on Facebook right now? Because remember, Facebook is free. If you ask people to jump out into a website, and this is what we were talking about earlier, is websites aren't free. So a lot of times when you look at the drop-off, and it's usually about 70% on a website, right? Why not get them to fulfill the form on Facebook itself? The last one is it's not about becoming viral. Again, it's about creating business objectives. And let me talk through 3. And it's still classic marketing. So the thing is, for all the marketers in the room, your channel has changed, but the core is still the same. So I'll talk about 3 things. One is you need to have a proper objective. The second is you need to think through, for that objective, what audience and message will I match to that? And then lastly is creatives. Because again, in an environment where you're competing against 2 Statues of Liberty's worth of content, how do you stand out among the crowd? So let's talk through objectives first. It's still the classic funnel. When you look at Facebook, you need to think through, am I introducing a new brand or product, at which point maybe awareness is important. At which point you do something like you talk about a brand awareness objective, right? So again, it's not about likes or engagements. You can actually go into the tool and say you want to optimize for reach and frequency. You have a product, for example, that's tailored for 5 million people, male and female of this age. You want to be able to send a brand awareness, a reach and frequency where your ad shows to them once every week. You can say it's about consideration. How do I get considered? You can do things like lead ads where you collect and build your CRM by showing an ad and telling people, please sign up, right? And then they give you their phone number or they give you your email. It's all automatically pulled because that data is kept as part of their Facebook profile. And when they give you permission to use it, then you can pull that and then use it to do things like retargeting. And lastly, it's about conversions. And this is the thing that gets me most excited. It's how do I get someone to download my app? How do I get someone to physically go to my store? How do I get someone to go to my online website to order that toy for their child's birthday? So it's about conversion. So again, it's about business objective, saying, do I want to introduce a new product and get awareness of it out? Do I want to generate a mobile list of people I can target or retarget or communicate with or meet up with? Or is it creating conversion to get people to act on something on Facebook? And if you've all played around with your own ads, you probably saw this where someone asked you to download a game or maybe click here to shop now or find out more. That's how more and more businesses are thinking about using the platform. So let's go through it really fast. Brand awareness is fairly straightforward. This is classic marketing, right? You want to reach as many people in your target market as you can. The simple thing is, in Facebook with about 70 to 75 million people, you pretty much have 90+% of the Philippines buying public as your potential audience. The next one is lead ad on Facebook. So this is how an actual lead ad looks. So if you've ever tried mobile web, it's really confusing. Lead ad, when you use a lead ad, anyone's mobile number and email is already filled in. You can then ask them 5 different questions. Say, for example, you're an insurance company or an investment company and you want to tell people about your product. You can say sign up now, and you can ask questions like, I would like to sign up. When would you like us to call you? What number can we call you at? What time? And then you create a database of now leads that populates your CRM, and you can do things like connect it to your outbound call center so that as the leads get populated, you can drive this. So just as an example, I can't share which it is, but a bank recently, about 3 months ago, launched a lead ad product. About 20% of their entire leads for a new channel 3 months ago now comes from Facebook leads. So again, it's leveraging that leads because people don't have to leave the platform. The next is offer ads. So let's say you have a store, both physical or online. You can, for example, on this one, you can create a barcode offer. So you can create a barcode offer and partner. Let's say you have your own shop, you can connect it to your point of sale. You can do things like you can make this unique to that individual's phone number so that it can't be gamed. You can say that it's only usable once. So the minute that that barcode is scanned, that unique coupon expires. You can also do things like if you having 5, 10, and so forth. You can also then use this to work with partners. So for example, you're a distributor of products and you want to work with someone, for example, like a physical distributor like 7-Eleven or SM or so forth, right? You can create a barcode so that they can scan it at point of sale. You can also do a thing, if you're online, you can create a unique online code where you can drive people to your site and say, come to my online toy shop. Here's a unique code for you for any first-time buyer, right? So think about how complex it is today to do things like, if you've ever been to a mall, the people handing out those physical flyers and so forth, or umbrellas to get people to sign up. Why not do that again organically over the mobile phone where everyone is interacting anyway? You can do things like targeting. So let's say you have multiple stores. Why waste your ad where people aren't in your physical store? So you can do things like you can geo-pin your specific store locations and say, because traffic is horrible in Manila, I only want to send my advertisement to anyone who is within a 5-kilometer radius, either lives there, works there, or transits through there. So that way you don't send, for example, if your shop is in Parañaque, you don't send your ad to someone who lives in Bulacan. Because the likelihood that you'll go is pretty low because it's pretty far, right? So again, it's all about creating efficiency and spend. When you do the store locator, you can actually click through and put your physical map, right? And the other thing you notice here is more and more people are starting to use not just that one frame. Is when you pay for this, there's not much difference in price to doing things like a carousel where you use more of the horizontal space of the advertisement. So you can drive visits to your physical location to do that. So that's the first. We talked about what is the right objective. So just to recap, it's not about likes, engagements, followers. You need to think through what your business objective is, and there's an actual product or tool behind that. Next is targeting. Targeting is really important. It's actually one of the powerful tools within Facebook. So there are 3 types of targeting within Facebook: core, custom, and lookalike. And it gets more complex as you move along. The first is core audience, and this is your classic. Right? Because we gather information, you're able to do things like, I want to target anyone who's this age, right, lives in this province, is married with 2 children of ages between 0 to 10. So for example, again, I like the toys example which we were talking about over lunch. You can fine-tune your targeting to not send it to people without children. So maybe you say, I want to be efficient at the start and get it going. So what you do is you send it only to people who've said that they have kids. And only those with kids below 8 years old, right? So you can do core fine demographic targeting. And the interesting thing is, and we were talking about earlier in the table, is you can sell beyond. Like we were talking trivia, which is the #2 revenue country for Facebook is China. Which is crazy because China has no Facebook users, but it's because there are all these Chinese companies that are targeting outside. So I was working actually with a bank, which was launching a remittance platform. And they had gone to OWA, which is the Overseas Administration, and they said, how many Filipinos are there in Hong Kong? There's 150,000. When they chatted with me, I quickly pulled up a tool, which by the way is free for everybody. I went to Hong Kong, found out they have about 7 million users. I then did a demographic poll that says, please filter the 7 million users in Hong Kong for those that speak Filipino. Guess what? There was about 320,000. So there was about double which OWA actually had registered. So there were 320,000 people that now this company in the Philippines can uniquely target in an ad in Hong Kong. Right? So that's the power of demographic targeting. As I mentioned, you can use location, you can use behaviors, you can use partners, and so forth. More complex, and it gets more interesting and more effective as you move up, is a thing called custom audience. So you can marry multiple things. Like for example, if you have a database, right? Let me move this first. You have a database of people who've signed up before. Let's say you have it physically on paper, or you have it as a database poll, people who've shown interest in your product before, or they visited your website. So for example, this is the classic example of, and I know some people aren't too happy with it, but if you've ever seen where you researched and went to a site and looked at something like, let's say, a mobile phone case, or you went to a travel site and said, I want to check out prices for flights to Japan. And then guess what? An ad gets served to you that now gives you an offer or a discount for that flight to Japan. This is how that happens. It's basically a custom audience. You can create custom audiences from data that you have. So customers who've applied to you before, you can retarget them. If you're, for example, banks and financial services like to look at product per client, PPC. So let's say they have someone who has a deposit product. They load a custom audience of all their customers with a deposit product and say, please retarget them with a pre-approved loan because you know that how much balance they have in their account. So that's what a custom audience does. You give me your database of people and I basically find them and serve them the ad that you want. And again, all the data that's yours is kept yours. I never see all of this because it's hashed before it gets to our servers. The last one, and probably the most powerful, is lookalike. Is because it takes out the guesswork from marketing. What a lookalike audience is if you've identified your best clients. So let's say you sell property and you now know who your best clients are because they fast sell, their checks didn't bounce, they bought higher value property and so forth. You load those people who are affiliated or have affinity to your product, and you don't even need to guess what their segmentations are. You don't need to guess their age, their demographics, their gender, their location, and you just say, Facebook, please find me people who look like my best customers. So banks use this, for example, and say, I want to load my best credit card clients, right? Those that charge a lot, don't pay down everything, and float a bit and pay interest on some of it, right? Then they load that down and say, Facebook, find me other people to apply who look like these people. And then the algorithms behind kick through a couple of thousand variables to find people who look like that. So we talked about what your business objective is. We then talked about how you need to target and how the platform allows you to target efficiently. The last one relates to all those things happening. In a world where you're competing against so much content, how do you design creatively for a mobile-first environment? This was how the world looked before, right? So basically you saw a TV commercial, it lasted about 30 seconds and they told the story. The problem with the first marketers, what they did was they took the classic ad and put it on Facebook. A couple of issues there is when you look at it, you're not using the full frame because traditional storytelling is widescreen. The other issue with that is traditional storytelling has the punchline at the end. But guess what? Because people are surfing, going through 300 feet of feed, they probably spend maybe 3 to 5 seconds only on each content. So you need to hit it really fast. You can't have the punchline at the end, and I'll give some examples. So the first thing that as you look through when you start marketing is don't think of it as, I'm going to upload my 30-second video or my TV commercial. You should also utilize the full frame. Guess what? When you place an ad, you've paid for the full frame. You might as well use that full real estate. And then the last is you need to think through how you play creatively with all the concepts. So I'll just run through this one by one. So chips, it's running for about 3 or 4 seconds. Captured attention really quickly, right? The brand was in the first second. So you knew it was chips, you knew what the brand was. And then within 5 seconds, you captured certain things. Guess what? It's spicy, right? Because it talked about fire and stuff. It had it exploding. So people, naturally, there's a thing which we call thumb stopping. It makes them stop because they want to look at it. The next one is you need to take people through a story without sound. And you do that through copy. So it is. So as you think through, you don't use sound. You need to use a lot of visual voiceovers, which means you use copy. So this one is talking about without rules. It's fast, so he's talking about speed, right? Packs and so forth. So you need to take them through the story with words. The other one is you need to think through how people now, especially as stories, if anyone's ever used Instagram stories or Facebook stories, people are now interacting with video in a vertical format. So you need to look through how people can play around with frames. And I broke my own rule on the sound. My sound is actually on. So you do the full frame. If you look at how they did that in that other commercial, it was like very playful where they looked at the frames and stuff. So here I'll play the original TV commercial, right? Imagine doing this on your mobile phone. I'm gonna guess that most of you will drop off after a few seconds. So this is the original TVC. It's been about 4 seconds. You don't know yet what's happening. What product? You can guess maybe it's Bose from the top, but what is she selling? I'm not sure. I can guarantee you about 70% of the audience has now left this ad because it's about 6 seconds already, 7 seconds. There's no words, so you don't know what are they pitching. What is the product value? What are they communicating? What is the actual offer? We don't know yet, right? I'll play the other one side by side now of how you optimize it. First thing you notice is look, it's square, so it's taking up more real estate. It's how we actually consume content now. If you notice that, the other ad is actually still playing, but that second ad within like 3 or 4 seconds captured it. If you notice, it was throwing the words, it was showing the vibration, so you felt the beat even without actually hearing anything. You saw the product, you saw the brand, and so forth. That's how you capture attention quickly. Next is design stories without sound. This is actually not too bad. It's a bit long, so I'll play the not yet optimized ad. Right? So it just wasted about 3 seconds by just showing words. Right? As you go along, okay, some words are good. But not much is happening. Again, at the same time, I'll play an optimized ad and run it at the same time. So words, brands, right? 3 to 1 countdown, so you know it's race, you know it's fast. They visually put the slider, so you know how fast. Oh, there's the actual speed, they write it down. So again, from a creative perspective, right? They're taking you through a story with visual cues. So again, design with the thought of sound off. Frame your visual story. Again, imagine holding a phone and looking at this commercial on the left, which again isn't too bad because it's fairly choppy, it's fast cuts and stuff. But imagine this one on the right. Makes you really want to go out and grab a beer right now. You've paid for the whole site, so might as well put multiple images as well. Right? So again, play with the whole visual. So with that, I want to end and leave time for some Q&A. But basically, this is a picture of our office and in Menlo Park. Notice something is that the tops, in any Facebook office you go to, the ceilings are always undone, right? And the floors are always, it's concrete, because it looks unfinished. Because Mark likes to say that the journey is only 1% done, right? No matter what we've done, there's still 99% to do. And actually, with that, we have 5 values. They're all very short, pithy statements. One of my favorites is be bold. Because basically, as you look back, saying that you don't want to be the sign on someone else's, someone else's future headquarters, right? How do you do that? And I think it's about being bold. And going back to Rex's opening earlier, is how do you take up that challenge, right? So I challenge everyone here to be bold and say there's this new wave of disruption coming, right? How do you leverage that? How do you leverage that platform? And how do you communicate with your customers when the touch point is mobile? With that, I always just like very purpose-driven, just like the end. At Facebook, we're all about giving people the power to build communities and bring the world closer together. And part of that bringing people closer together is bringing people closer to the brands, the products and services that they love. With that, again, thank you very much. I really appreciate the invite. I hope that was
All right, once again, can we give another round of applause to Mr. John Rubio for that very insightful presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and your pointers have definitely triggered some ideas on how we should change our business standards here, business operations here in the Philippines. All right, so for the next portion, we'll be heading on to the question and answer to be facilitated by our VP for Internal Affairs, Mr. Ravi Santani. And of course, a small announcement on the mechanics. So for every table that we have placed a mobile number, is also being flashed on the screens ahead. So as Mr. Rubio mentioned, we are the SMS capital in the world. Why not just maximize that right now? We can use our mobile phones, send out questions that Mr. Ravi will be facilitating. Any questions that you have with regards to how businesses could be optimized with the use of Facebook. And of course, maybe any other questions that you would have for Mr. Rubio. So I'll just read out the number. That's 0966-725-8886. Once again, you may also please feel free to write your questions to our secretariat staff. There are papers provided per table. And again, I'd like to call on Mr. Ravi Santani, please.
Thanks very much, Roshan. And thank you, John, for a very informative presentation. As Roshan mentioned, you can send your questions by SMS or simply write them down on pieces of paper on your table, and the secretariat staff will be going around to collect them. While waiting, I'd like to ask you, John, how exactly does Facebook gather the data or the information? Is it upon sign up Facebook, or do you have third-party companies who provide you with this information? Like you mentioned earlier that you can specifically target an audience, like someone in the family who have children below a certain age. But how does Facebook know who has children below a certain age?
So a lot of times that's actually declared. So for example, when you look at when I sign up, right, you create relationships. So when you're on my Facebook page, you know who my spouse is, right? You know their age. You know my daughters, for example, when they sign up that they're my daughters. So a lot of it is user-generated when you sign up or interact with the platform. So again, because I know there's this whole privacy, which is why it's all consent-based, right?
But the option of putting this information is on the user, the subscriber, right? He can choose not to fill in all that information. So not many people would actually fill in that data, the children they have, and
the interesting thing is you don't actually fill in a question. Is when your children are on Facebook as well, right? You log on to that, and it gets leveraged from there. Like for example, you update and say, I have 4 kids, right? Instead of 3, because my wife just gave birth, and you put stuff like that in. So
okay. So it all really depends on what information is keyed in, right?
And some are, and again, I know security and privacy is a big thing, which is why throughout the year, and again, very upfront, we all know the whole Cambridge Analytica talk and all of that. So actually it's gotten a lot more upfront, where security settings are very transparent, and you can turn on and off certain things. Like the location targeting, where people who have left the location capabilities on, you can turn that off. So that's how it works. And when you have an ad, it will target the people who said that, hey, you know what, I'm okay with location because it improves the service.
Now, when you have advertisements on Facebook, is it possible to check who is actually checking in and viewing your ads? Is it your target audience? Is it people who you're really trying to target?
So I'll be clear about, you can view aggregate statistics on your audience. You don't specifically know who they are. So what that means is that, and this is why the whole discussion around audiences is really interesting, is you can do something, for example, like create a custom audience of people who have interacted with your ad. And it's interacted without the classic pressing of like. So there's a concept of dwell time, which is scientifically we know that how long people spend on content, and that differs by person to person. So for example, my daughter, who's 20 years old, scans really fast because they've grown up being able to take data really fast. Let's say your average scan speed for a square piece of content is about 1.2 seconds. I'm old and my eyesight is bad, so maybe -3. So if she dwelled on it for 2, right, that's faster than mine, but it's considered dwell for her, but not for me. Like for me, it needs to be 4 seconds because my standard is 3. So you can create audiences of people who've dwelled. Now, I'm using that as an example to highlight the fact that you can't specifically find and say John Rubio is part of your audience. What it creates is, here is your audience, and here is the statistics for them in aggregate. So like the people who dwelled with your ad, here's the distribution of their age, gender, and so forth.
What is Facebook doing to address issues such as fake news and data misuse? That is a very big. Those are two very big issues these days.
Right. No, so let me stand for it. I feel better chatting. So fake news is very important, right? And it's especially important because when you look at our product is the actual content. So when there is fake news, it's actually not good for our platform, because we want the content in our platform to have integrity so that people trust it. Right? So we want them to be able to trust things like ads, and they can only do that if they can believe that the content that they view on our platform has integrity. So with that said, it's as important for us as everyone else to fix fake news. The way you do it is a couple of different ways. One is you need to take out the monetary reasons to do it, because a large part of why there is fake news is because it's monetization driven. Great insight in the table earlier. Guess what? It's because of clickbait sites. So for example, a lot of fake news wants you to click and go to a site where they will harvest your information. They'll say, please input your credit card, or please, input your personal details. So what we do is we try to take out the monetization pathways for fake news, which means that if they are redirecting to a clickbait site, what we talked about earlier is that you get banned. So basically the page gets taken down, and then we don't allow anyone to point to that site anymore. So that's the first, is that a lot of fake news dies when you kill the monetization pathways for them. The second is a lot of fake news comes from fake user accounts. And what we do is we have a proactive way of finding fake accounts and removing them from our system. So just the other day, we had someone removed, her name was Hannah Montana. So we know her name wasn't really, right? Because she's in the Philippines and so forth. So she was removed from the platform. So the first one is you remove the monetization pathways. The second one is you remove fake accounts. And third and lastly is we don't try to be the arbiter of truth. So there's a delicate balance between freedom of speech and basically breaking false news. In a way, sometimes in the US, for example, satire is allowed. So the thin line between fake news, because they're malicious actors, versus someone who's doing satire is a thin line. What we do though, is when you've been shown to have fake news, or for example, we have partner fact checkers, you get deprioritized, which means your content doesn't get shared on people's feed because it gets deprioritized. So those are the three main ways that we target fake news.
Is there a way to measure ROI with a Facebook ad? Like, how do we know that the people calling us is a result of the ad we have placed on Facebook?
Great question, and it depends on the product that you're selling. So if you're selling a purely digital product, that's the easiest. Your ROAS, so your return on ad spend, is a directly calculable cost. Because you can take your advertising costs, you then look at what the penetration was and said, you know what, I showed my ad to 1 million people, I got 100,000 people who went to my site, and all of that, 50,000 eventually, let's say for example, bought something online. So you can quickly tell that it had 10% penetration on, what do you call this, people to the site. It had a 5% penetration of sales. So that's very easy to measure. Then you can say this sale cost this much. You can even do things when you have quant really well placed, is you can do things like lifetime value. Because you can see, did that customer buy again? And you can even do comparisons like, the customers I got from this ad is 2x more valuable than that. It gets a bit trickier when you have an offline product. It gets harder and harder. So a pure digital product is super easy. People going to a website, downloading something, ordering something, having something delivered, you can readily track. There's a middle ground, which is if you get them to go to your physical store, or if you get them to go to a partner store. If you use one of the products I showed earlier, like a barcode, where you generate an offer, and it's scanned at the point of sale, you can create things like pulling offline conversions, which means you knew the ad, drove someone to that store because they scanned your code, right? So you can do that. The other way is, the hardest is you work backwards from secondary metrics. So for example, you want to do something like brand awareness. What you want to do is you then measure the brand awareness. There's a specific way you can do it by doing a questionnaire as part of Facebook. So if you've ever gotten a questionnaire where they ask you 3 questions like, do you remember seeing an ad for brand X? Did it make you more likely to buy? Do you remember what the product was about or who their endorser was? So you can track things like that on Facebook and have questions so that you can track things like brand. So long answer, but brand awareness, you can measure metrics by doing a poll test. You can do offline conversions, especially if you use things like barcodes or unique customer identifiers when they have a lead ad. For example, say, use this unique code when you sign up. And then the easiest, and it's like highly measurable, is when you have a purely digital product, either an online store or asking someone to download a game or an app.
Do you have a marketing team that can actually educate businesses on how they can further boost their sales through Facebook? Because although your presentation was very informative, there are a lot of businesses out there who don't really realize how they can build their businesses through Facebook. So do you have a team going around, if we would like people to come over and discuss it with our marketing team in-house? Is that available?
So different tiers, and I'll be perfectly honest, is we have a very small team. So that team takes care of advertisers of a certain size, but we want to make sure, which is why I do, for example, these discussions, is please reach out to me. Because what we try to do is, depending on who comes together, we can do things like pull 10 brands together or 10 companies together and have a discussion there. If you're a certain set of, you spend X amount, I have someone who does remote support. So for example, you can call them anytime and they help you over the phone. To go to this thing called Facebook Blueprint, it's fully free. It's in essence an MBA almost of digital marketing, where you can sign up and basically take courses where you can do things like the lookalike audience targeting that I talked about, then talk about it in granular detail. There are things like offline conversion tracking down to that level available online. So please reach out to me. Feel free to send my email over out to anyone, and I'll be happy to see what kind of tier level of service we can provide.
Now, let's say I want to target an affluent market. How does Facebook know who is affluent and who's not?
So it's in beta test, but SEC-based targeting is launching in Q4. So you can do it based on that, but it's not yet available today in the Philippines.
Okay.
It'll be available 2019, definitely.
2019. That's something to look forward to. Now, let's say I have a Facebook page where I'm advertising a product, and there are a lot of negative comments which are adversely affecting my ad. Is there a way to filter these, or is there a way to remove them so that it doesn't affect us negatively?
Right. No, so it's a good question, and it's an internal debate, because here's the dilemma, right? In a platform that was built upon sharing and allowing people to give people a voice to say what they feel without censorship, we then tread that line, right? So what I suggest you do there is, so first off, there's no way to remove that, because a comment is a comment, right? Someone, whether or not it was malicious or not, it's a free country and they can post that comment. There are certain guidelines that they can't break, so they can't harass, for example. They can't have false claims. Anything that's illegal is not allowed. They can't harass you. They can't threaten you, right? If they're stealing your intellectual property, you can file that. So all of that can be taken down. But if it's something like your product gave me a tummy ache, right? That is it's open for discussion. And what I suggest most people do is you need to be proactive of having a voice to answer those comments, right? The second thing I suggest is that if you have bad actors, guess what? You also have good actors, which are people who love your brand and protect it. I'll give a concrete example. So there's an airline where it was being attacked by someone who was creating a fake site to make you go to that site. And they would do things like they would misspell the word that was in their brand. Instead of one L, they would put double L so that it would look like the same brand, right? So what happened was, when they would post it, it was amazing, because someone would, you can obviously tell it was the person who was trying to generate the scam, he would say, you know what, this is a great offer.